Hey, what's up, guys? This is the Super Saiyan Prodigy here, and today I will be talking about extra deck monster choices for the Phantom Knights deck. I've seen a lot of people debate on what monsters to pick, what packages they should run, like Dragoon or Requiem package, different tech choices, etc. So today I'm here to make a general video about what I've seen the most extra deck monsters played in some deck lists, some debates I see on forums or Facebook groups. But remember, this is just my opinion, so feel free to disagree with me or comment down below in case you think there's a really good extra deck monster that I didn't talk about, or if you find it really good combo with. So yeah, so the one I want to start off talking about is the Dark Requiem package. So I feel this package is closer in spirit to Phantom Knights because in the anime, at least, when in our you don't have to pay attention to this if you don't want to, but for those who know about the anime, when Yuya took over Yuto, he ranked up the Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon into Requiem, and it looked pretty cool, honestly, the animation when he summoned it out. But yeah, so you're never gonna summon this with 3 level 5 monsters, since that's what this deck doesn't do at all. I mean, I don't know any rank 5 decks that could do that, but it's basically fucking 3 monster negations, not a once per chain, not a hard once per turn. So it can negate from anywhere on the field, graveyard, banish stone, etc. And it was really good last format, in my opinion. I think it was the package that, um, I mean, you could have ran a Dragoon package. I know Josh Oysters. He won the PPG event at the beginning of the format. I think really early though. And I also heard of Julio Mendoza, and I watched some of his videos, and where he won his remote duel invitational qualifier and then got to duel at the remote duel invitational. So that just goes to show about how good this package was against the top tier decks like Virtual World and Droidtron, since they all relied on monster effects. However, currently now though, since we're dealing with a lot of trap based decks like Invoke, Dogmatica, Shaddoll variants, um, Tri Brigade runs. I mean, I like to think of it as kind of a trap deck since they do play a decent amount of traps. I do know I can see though as if you were to say that, oh, it's not really a trap deck because it's not as trap heavy as other decks. And also we have Outlich. Outlich isn't that strong because we have like other more played stuff like Shadows and Dragon Link, but it's still there. And then Prank Kids too play a fairly decent amount of traps. Pure Zodiacs as well. Zoo Outlich, Zoo Tri Brigade, for those variants that mix Zodiac inside of there. So I think with all the traps running this format and all the power spells, a lot of people are main decking Dark Ruler no more. Dinos also run Lightning Storm as well. I feel like Requiem just isn't as good because nobody ran these cards last format because of everybody would just try to use True King of All Calamities in the standby phase. So I mean, for me, I just don't think it was the optimal play. And even if they did wait until main phase, they usually would use Shushe, the trap that pops a card, to target their own VFD and then chain VFD to the Shushe. So it was pretty nuts back the virtual world format, but that's how it is. I still think this is a decent, budget pick. This package isn't that expensive, and I mean, you could get away with running it in your locals. If you can predict if people are going to be playing monster heavy effect decks in your remote duel tournament, then by all means go for it. But for me personally, I don't think it's that good, this format. And also, if you decide to run this package with Dragoon, you leave yourself very vulnerable to Nibiru because you kind of have to go all in. Meanwhile, in my opinion, just playing like Appaloosa with Dragoon, Appaloosa you can go for fairly early, and then you can go ahead and with enough extenders, you can go ahead and stack your Dragoon on top of your Appaloosa for protection against lightning storms, evenly matches, like I mentioned before, that a lot of people are playing for the like from the going second decks. So yeah, and then let's see, what should I talk about next? Since I'm already on Xyz monsters, let's go ahead and talk about the best one. It is the Phantom Knights of Breaksword. This does a lot for the deck. It can be served as link material. It prevents your Phantom Knights from being banished, like the Torn Scales drawback and the drawback of when you special summon them from the graveyard. They end up being banished when they leave the field, but thanks to the ruling that Xyz materials don't count as being on the field, you avoid that drawback. Breaksword can be used as disruption on your opponent's turn by self-summoning the trap to an arrow zone that Rusty points to for disruption, free pop. And it can also get you potentially 2 pops on your own turn by using Rusty effect and then using its own effect. And then it can also just help you after you bring your Phantom Knight monsters back, link away, or go into your One Punch Man package. More on that later. But yeah, for me, and I feel like for majority, pretty much everyone runs 2. I don't think it's bad if you run 3, depending on what other extra deck choices you run. I just feel like 2 is fine because more likely than not, you're going to go into 1 on your first turn to get inside the graveyard so you have disruption on your opponent's turn so they can make their board. And then you go ahead on your turn and then go ahead and try to OTK them as fast as possible. So you're most likely than not going to need to bring out the second one. And I feel for that, I haven't really had an instance where I was like, oh, I really wish I had a third Breaksword. But I mean, it might come up later. I mean, we are in a little bit, like a few days into post Lightning Overdrive, so we'll see though. But yeah, pretty much the best Xyz monster in the Phantom Knights deck, in my opinion. Let's go ahead and talk about another really good card, Levier. It does a lot for the deck because you end up being able to recycle your Phantom Knight monsters, and so it helps keep your deck count low because what I see some people do is they run 3 cloaks and then 2 gloves. And for me, that's a bit too much because it increases your likelihood of opening up gloves and cloak. And if you open them up, they don't really like synergize with each other since they can't special summon themselves. So you end up bricking unless if you draw into something where you can use them as discard fodder, but that's a little bit luck based right there. So for me, I really like to usually get cloak back because I usually end up banishing it, like using my Torn Scales effect, dumping cloak, and then banishing it to search out a boots, and then you can bring it out and then boost your Rusty, and then you essentially have 3 cloaks to search out your 3 boots. Or for me, since I like to run a little bit more traps to make my monster effects more alive in the grind game, you can also bring back gloves as a one of. But yeah, it does a lot for this deck. You could bump it up to 2. If we had like options like Utopic Future Dragon, like the OCG does, then I'd consider running it. But for right now, I think 1 is fine. Let's go and talk about another card. Okay, Gossip Shadow. So some people run this over Appaloosa. Some people who run both. I feel you should run Appaloosa over the Xyz monster. I get the premise for it, that you want to protect yourself from Nibiru on your turn, but I feel like just going in for just 1 extra extender is going to be more worthwhile than the Gossip Shadow, because the Gossip Shadow only gets access to 1 negate, and plus your opponent gets to draw into another card, and that could be just another hand trap or a missing combo piece that they needed, and so now they have it to use against you. So the reason why this is played in the OCG is because they have access to Rango Bongo, as you can see here. It's banned in the TCG, and since Gossip Shadow has the effect where it can attach itself as Xyz materials, so wait, let me reword that. It has the ability to attach itself as Xyz material, and the material is already on Gossip Shadow onto Rango Bongo, and so. And see, this usually gets brought out after the break sword because it's two level 4 warrior monsters. So usually most OCG players use the break sword rusty combo, and then so it already has two, and then you basically add on the 3 to get to 5, and you basically is, as you can see, a Zeus on your opponent's board. You just walk in Solemn Warning, and it's an Ultimate Falcon. Like that's fucking nuts, honestly. Yeah, I mean, if we had access to that, holy shit, this deck would honestly be pretty up there. On all honesty, maybe a tier 2 deck like it is in the OCG. But I digress. So another, I think I should talk about the Zeus package here. So it might sound redundant for a lot of the things I say for the Xyz monsters, so sorry if it does get to that point, but a lot of them are similar in their drawback, so let me go ahead and explain. So I'll go ahead and start off with Nightmare Shark. Alright, so some people run this in order to go into Zeus. I don't really like it. I think it's too fragile. I get the premise for it, you know, that your opponent has some monsters on the field, but the thing is, though, you have to rely on its effect going off, and you have to rely on it successfully getting through your opponent's back row. But, like, 9 times out of 10, your opponent's going to have something reactive, like a Schism in their back row, Solemn Strike, Warning, Judgment. They're going up against a Dragon Link board. They're just going to negate it with Hot Red Dragon Archfiend, Borreload Savage Dragon. And like, well, even if you do open up like Droplet or Dark Ruler no more, it's like they can still chain Tightening to it, you know. But yeah, I don't know. For me, it's too weak. I mean, the 2K damage is nice. Fun fact, I did try this out once. I tried it out for like a week or so, and it did. I was able to attack for game with it one time, but that was just like luck right there. So another card people like to run as part of the Zeus package is Fortune Tune. This is, I think, pretty decent actually if you want to go into Zeus, since it can't be targeted, and if it would be destroyed, you can just go ahead and detach an Xyz material from it. For me, though, I feel like this deck, you really want to try to OTK as fast as possible. So, for me, I feel like I'd rather go into my Arc Rebellion package than hoping I get into some kind of attack, hoping it successfully doesn't get schismed, doesn't get fucked up during the battle phase, and then I can successfully go into the Zeus. Maybe successfully go into the Zeus in my main phase too, and hoping that they don't have a reaction towards Zeus. But I mean, it's decent. I get the premise for it. I just feel like your break sword and your rusty combination already do a good job of clearing up your opponent's monsters and their back row. So yeah, going and then the boss monster himself, Zeus. I don't really find it coming up that much, to be honest. Where I was just like, oh, I wish I had the Zeus package instead of the Arc Rebellion package. I mean, for a while, um, I did take out the Arc Rebellion package. I know Josh Oysters doesn't play the Arc Rebellion package, but for me, I'd rather just be able to not leave it up to chance, basically. I don't really like taking risk a whole lot. So most of the time, like your opponent will be able to out the Zeus though. That's why you see top deck. That's why you don't see really Zeus topping that whole lot. Like you can look at like the LCS top 16 list, and you see that. I'll go ahead and post the link in the description to it. But yeah, so for me, I don't think that like Zeus isn't really ban worthy since the only deck that really runs it is Zodiac. So let them keep their own boss monster, you know, because literally that's the only deck that runs it. Um, like Dragon Link doesn't run it, Prank Kids doesn't run it. Um, Drytron maybe could run it, but I don't really know the decks right now post Lightning Overdrive, so we have to wait and see. Shaddoll Invoke doesn't run it, so for me, I feel like it's fine where it's at right now. Same thing with Downerd Magician. Some people just play it to get into an extra material for Zeus. Um, I mean, it's a dark attribute monster at least, but the problem is though you're locked into darks after you use Break Sword's effect, so you can't overlay and go main phase 2 for Zeus because it's a light attribute monster. I understand the premise for Burning Abyss as to why they do so, because they're not locked into darks and they're a control based deck, so they do want to get as much materials onto Zeus as possible. And then speaking of Burning Abyss, I see some people running Dante in their deck lists. I personally don't agree with it because with the addition of Torn skills, you already have easy ways of getting your Fam Knight monsters into the graveyard. Like with PK Fire, like yeah, that made sense because milling was the way to go to get most of your Fam Knight monsters into the graveyard since the only one that got them in there was gloves, but people didn't really like gloves back in the day, so yeah, I mean, the only niche combo I see people talking about on forums is that, oh, you can add back the Seer with Dante's effect and to add to Burning Abyss monster back to your hand, and then you can normal summon Seer. It'll blow itself up, and you get your Link 2 Cherubini back on forward, but that's a bit too slow, in my opinion, to be able to work. And like I said, you want to be able to, like, OTK your opponent as fast as possible or minimize like, the least amount of their resources as possible. Get rid of like most of them if you can during your turn. So yeah, and plus this is also a light attribute monster, so you won't be able to get the effect with the rusty disruption as well. I'm trying to think of any other Xyz monsters I have not talked about. I guess I would wrap things up with the Raiders Knight. Let's see if I forget. So I remember something else, but I can't at the top of my head. The Raiders Knight lets you rank up into an Xyz monster that's one rank higher or one rank lower. So a lot of people forget that you can actually rank down into Break Sword in case you need to get like a bothersome card out the way on your opponent's field. But it's pretty cool in my opinion. I think most of the time though you're going to be going into your Arc Rebellion Xyz Dragon. It gets so much attack. Like it feels so good being able to like droplet my opponent's Dragon Link or Dino board and going into this game and then swinging them in for like over 10k damage into their face. Yeah, and then besides the fact that it gets so much attack, it's also a skill drain on the field as well. So let's say even if you don't like attack per game, right? Like this is still pretty hard to get over once because it keeps all the attack. It doesn't lose the attack at all. It's just it just keeps it. So yeah. So there's like your opponent will have to like go like do something, have to deal with this even if you do let them live. But yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot now. Now I remember. I gotta talk about the So there are some Xyz monsters people run. So in case if you draw Red Eyes Fusion, if you run the Dragoon package, but you have like decent enough extenders, like you have a Tour Guide Kagamuchi in hand, or Tour Guide, or no, Torn Scales and extenders. You know, you got something that where you don't want to risk being hit by an Ash Blossom. Like you don't mind dealing with an Ash Blossom because if you get hit with Ash Blossom with Red Eyes Fusion, then you can't normal summon or a special summon at all that turn. So what I see a lot of people doing is running Time Thief Redoer. Um, I feel this card is okay. I feel it's gimmicky though, because you're relying on whatever your opponent runs at the in their deck, or whatever they end up would be top decking that you end up attaching to this as material during the standby phase to like gain whatever effect this has. Like I wouldn't want the spell draw effect because that could risk me getting drawing into my dragoon pieces, and the reason why you run this is because you already opened up fusion, so why would I want to risk drawing into one of my dragoon bricks? Monster, it banishes itself. Okay, that's fine, but you're kind of giving your opponent one less monster to deal with. I mean, this isn't that, troubling. Then I guess it's decent if you end up attaching a trap card, but like it's just one face-up card. Like, so you kind of end up, it's just like a bounce, it's kind of becomes like a heretic seal, I guess, in that kind of aspect of things. But that you're just relying on luck right there. So for me, I'd rather go with the alternative, in my opinion. Pull it up right here. Evil Swarm Nightmare. For me, I think this is really a good Xyz monster because it's not that hard to make. Plus, it's 2 Book of Moons in a monster. And then you have people that are either maining or siding in Book of Moon this format. And the fact that we can get access to 2 of them on our opponent's turn, like it does suck that it can miss timing, but the fact that it can stop Dragon Link from getting their shit into the graveyard and then also not being able to special summon with them is fucking nuts, you know? But yeah, for me though, it can also put shit like Red Eye, like Dragoon face down too, just to bait out a negation. It can also put shit like, shit all Wind does, Constructs face down. Zodiacs, it can put their fucking it'll force them to go into Dryden unless if they have some like prior negation from that. But yeah, just like forcing your opponent, because like it just baits out shit from your opponent because nobody wants their shit face down. So yeah, that's my opinion on the card. So if you have good RNG, good luck in this game, then maybe Time Thief Redoer could work in your favor. But for me, I don't like leaving this game up to chance, especially when every other hand I draw is Dragoon pieces. So I think Nightmare is the way to go in my opinion. But yeah, that wraps up most of the Xyz monster, I think. I'm going to try to think of any at the moment, but if I do think of any, I'll come back to it though. But oh yeah, I just thought of something. Abyss Dweller. Some people tell me, why don't we run it? Because well, one, you get locked into dark monsters after using the break sword effect. If you choose to special summon your Fam Knight monsters, some people point out in the forums that like, oh, but I can go Shade Brigadine, make it, since it's a level 4, I can go ahead and special summon Greaves, make it a level 4, and then go into Abyss Dweller. But I'm just like, that's such, like, that never comes up. Like, very rarely, like, I've only had it like one instance where I went like Shade Brigadine into like Stained Greaves, make them both level 4, then like go into Arc Rebellion. Like, I've been playing this game for like about 4 months, 4 to 5 months. I was learning this deck in like December and January, and then yeah, so like I just had like it just doesn't come up. Plus, I think your Fog Blades, the negations you put up already with your Requiem Dragoon is good enough already for it. So I don't feel this is needed, to be honest. You already have enough disruption and effect negation to where the point where I think it's doable. And plus, remember, you kind of want to OTK your opponent as fast as possible. But yeah, I think that's good enough for monsters. So let's go ahead and move on to the link. So smallest link we'll start off talking about is Link Spider. So Link Spider is pretty good because in case if you get an Iberian, the tokens on field get treated as normal monsters. And then even in the Dino matchup, they sometimes leave you with a token for your coming turn. So you can already go ahead and go into that right away. And then you can also use your Shade Brigandine itself to make it an effect monster so you can link into your Verte Anaconda and go into Dragoon. But yeah, I feel like it's really, you might not need it if you don't run Dragoon, but I feel like it's really good if you run the Dragoon package and serves two purposes in one, my opinion though. And going on to the link 2, we got the Nightmare Phoenix. I think this card is really good, this format, especially since we're dealing with a lot of back row decks like I mentioned before. I don't think the discard is really that bad, since most of the time you're going to be discarding like your Fan Knights cards, and then you can plus off of them from your graveyard. There's actually a really cool combo you can do, I learned from Julio Mendoza, where you can go ahead and if you have an extra extender, if when you get Cherubini and Seer on the field, you can go ahead and make your Nightmare Phoenix, and then you can either chain block the Phoenix or the Seer, and then you special summon them to the zones Cherubini points to, and they're going to be protected because Cherubini prevents monsters from being destroyed in the zones it points to. So then you can basically like kind of, I guess what's the word, like work out your opponent's back row one by one before you get into your Rusty, since more often than not they want to save their back row for when you bring out your boss monsters like Rusty, your break swords, etc. So I'll go ahead and I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have like a little recording of me in this video, just like showing off some combos I talked about that you could do. But yeah. And then the next link to I want to talk about is the honorary Fam Night monster itself, Cherubini. This is really good because it just takes 2 generic level 3s, so you can make this with your Psychic Wielders, Trackers, your Dangers, etc. And then the fact that it sends for cost is so good because your opponent could they could ash it, but they have to ash the graph though. And then it just and your opponent sometimes just wants to like destroy it. Like sometimes they'll torrential or get use some kind of destruction effect. So what you can do here is you can set a card actually, and then send it to the graveyard if they do try to pop it. But yeah. Or if they do have Gamma too as well. So, but yeah, you can also, even if you do end up drawing into Graph and Seer, you can go ahead and send a Fan Knight monster and then try to bring back your Torn Scales and then use your Torn Scales discard effect to either pitch Graph or Seer. And then depending on whether or not you have this or not on field, you'll hold off on it. But yeah. It's really good, honestly. I mean, like some Burning Abyss decks don't run it. Like I'm surprised. Like it's actually pretty much staple status for Fan Knights, but yet some Burning Abyss decks differ on whether or not it's useful for them in their opinion. But I'd say Fan Knights is really good since it helps us link faster into Rusty and set up our link plays with Appaloosa and the Verte Anaconda. And then the next monster is the Nightmare Unicorn. So this is also an optional link monster you can link off into. Like if you bring out your Phoenix and then you use your Seer effect to bring back the Graph. You can rank into this and then get rid of more of your opponent's back row as a safer play in case you want to hold off from going into Rusty. But yeah, it also serves as a way of link climbing your way up into access code Talker, so it'll give it 3,000 attack. But overall, it does come up at times. And then it's also a dark attribute monster, which you can use to go into after your break sword effect. And then link fours. I'm gonna save the Dragoon package to talk about for last, actually. But yeah, so I'll just go right into Access Code Talker since I was just talking about him. So Access Code Talker is really good, especially since your opponent can't respond to its activation. They can't just they have to like use something on it on the resolution of you targeting a link monster in your graveyard for the attack boost. But it serves as an alternate B stick in case if they interrupted your Arc Rebellion Xyz Dragon attack or their effect or whatever. So some decks that don't play Arc Rebellion package, they just go into access code just because it takes up fewer monsters. I did that for a while. I just felt like having the skill drain effect came up for me in a lot more scenarios, and the fact that it can't be destroyed by card effects also is what really made me pick Arc Rebellion over. Technically I run both, but it really made me want to keep Arc Rebellion package in my extra deck just because it's a fairly difficult card to get over, and then access code is just the alternate way in case you have to deal with more cards that your opponent has on field. But it's good though. It's a decent beat stick if you can get it up to, more often than not, I'd say 43 to 5300 attack-ish. But yeah. And then the Appaloosa, this card is really good since you can bring it out early with Cherubini, Seer, and one more extender early on. So that way you link into it before you're going into Rusty, because a lot of decks like to hit you with Nib as soon as you bring the Rusty out, and then you use the Seer effect to bring Cherubini out on field. But yeah, it serves as another good board negation that your opponent has to deal with. And it protects you from stuff like Phantasme. They usually like to hold off Ash until Rusty as well. So that's my personal opinion. It's really good for what it does. Helps the opponent from nibbing the entire board, and us having to deal with losing our Fam Knight monsters due to their drawbacks of being banished if they're special summoned, like Torn Skills or brought out by the traps. And then the boss monster himself, Rusty Bardiche. This card used to be banned, fun fact, for 10 months apparently, because what people used to do is, let me try to find the banned card actually. Azathoth, I think it's what it's called. What they would rank up Magic Launch used to be banned too, because what people used to do is that they'd mill a PK, right? Set the launch card, and then cannot be used as material for an Xyz summon. Your opponent cannot activate monster effects for the rest of the turn. So it was basically a VFD before VFD was turboed out. This was the precursor to VFD, basically. So yeah, so I can see that. But yeah, it was that good. And since it is at 3 though, but you don't really need to make 3 unless if there's some way to turbo it out. Plus, we already have good recursion for it by boosting it with Cloak, so it makes it harder for your opponent to like slightly get rid of it. And also, you can bring it back with your Fam Knight trap cards too. I haven't had a scenario where I really wanted it to have 2. It's not the end all be all if like it ends up getting removed from your extra deck, like with what's that? I forgot. There's like this card that your opponent's able to get rid of one or two of your extra deck monsters. I just forgot what it's called, but yeah, I think it's played in Dogmatic, I believe, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, I mean, it's a +2 as its effect, disruption. I mean, the fact that it can't even be it can't be link summoned is actually a benefit, because I've had so many people try to use Triple Tactics talent on it. They take it, they think like, oh, I'm just gonna link into an access code talker, and then I'm like, bro, monster condition. Yeah, you negated its effect, but it's a monster condition though. So I just end up they end up like having to just get rid of it, you know. So that way I don't get another plus on my next turn. And then wrapping things up is the Dragoon package. So I feel like this isn't ban worthy yet. If you go ahead and look at the LCS top deck list in the description below, it's not been doing very well. Like, I think the last LCS was like what, at the beginning of this format, where the Buster Blade or Dogmatica player ended up using it in their deck. But I mean, it was at the beginning of the format though, so it's like, you know, like it's like not everybody wants to compete at the beginning of the format though. At least in my personal opinion, you know, because like they held that tournament like a week or two even before the new format was supposed to start, and then there was like the extravaganzas. I'm getting a little bit too off topic, but I feel like due to like it's not been having like that much success, because you see only variants like Outlich, Outlich Dragoon run it, Subterra Guru run it, Unchained variants run it. Like it's just been mainly used in rogue strategies, because Dragon Links don't run it, Dinos don't run it, Prank Kids do not run it. Yeah, like all these like tier 1 to tier 2-ish decks just don't run it, so it's just helping us in rogue strategies. Like, yeah, I understand it's a powerful card, but I also understand why it was banned in the OCG though. Is because they have Max C over there, and to be able to like get out this big ass boss monster way more easily, way easily, way more easier over there with like little to no cost was the big problem. And they also didn't have access to droplets, I believe, over there, because we just got droplets in September, and Dragoon was released around that time too. But they had Dragoon since like what, 2020, I want to say, maybe 2019ish. But yeah, so I feel like you really need it, especially since the power traps. I cannot reiterate to you like how many, like fuck. Like I was on the Requiem package, right? I was thinking, okay, I got this. I'm gonna go to my first tournament after 3 to 4 weeks of you know, hammering shit down with this Requiem build, and then I go there, I fucking get hammered with fucking lightning storms, mystic mines, and I was just like, fuck. All I have is monster negations, and my ass just got wrecked by evenly matches too, actually. So dark, and then yeah, so just having this little like a little bit of negation just helps in the long run for this deck, especially since they're dark and we can make it easily after getting the break sword popped. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on the extra deck choices for Fam Nights. Let me know if you guys disagree, agree, or have various opinions on my extra deck choices, and then the combos and statistics I included. I'm gonna go ahead and post the links I talked about towards the decklists like the LCS, and I'll go ahead and check you guys out later. All right, peace. See you guys. Oh yeah, sorry about this. There's actually two more extra deck monsters I want to talk about that I just remembered as soon as I stopped the recording. It was IP Masquerade and Underworld of the Goddess. I just saw these in DB Grinders YouTube channel. I'll go ahead and link the video below. It was I want to say it's around the 1 minute mark. I'll go ahead and like leave the timestamp in the description for it. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of running IP just because like I feel like it's a decent form of disruption, right? But like most of your hands are gonna end with one or two cards, one for your Dragoon negate, and then the other one or two cards you could end up with are gonna be your hand traps. And I feel like I'd rather keep the hand traps, especially if they're like powerful hand traps that I'm more than likely going to have in games 2 and 3, like a Droll and a Lancia. So I'd rather have those powerful hand traps in hand than having to give one of them up to go to IP and then the Unicorn. And then in the DB Grinders match, this guy used IP. He special summoned a Break Sword for disruption into a zone Rusty points to, and then he went ahead and used the Break Sword that he special summoned that same turn to go into the Underworld Goddess. I feel like it is a decent choice. I'm not gonna lie, it's a really good form of disruption since it dodges Miss because it's a summoning condition. But for me, I feel it's a little bit too situational. And plus, you're really relying on being able to like go first in that aspect. And also, like I said before, it's like not every deck relies on just like one monster. Like in the Outlich matchup, like yeah, it's really beneficial to them to having Golden Lord, but that's not like the end all be all because they run other traps too, like those ones that like target and destroy, the ones that banish from your graveyard. And plus, Outlich can just special summon itself back up as a beat stick with 3500 attack that can't be destroyed. So for me, I feel like with the amount of trap decks we have, maybe if this was more like monster spam heavy, it'd be a little bit better. But in my opinion, it's not really worthwhile. But yeah, okay. Now I think I'm good with explaining the most popular extra deck choices. Like I said before, go ahead and let me know below about what you thought about some of my explanations. And yeah, I'll go ahead and sign off. Hope you guys have a good day. See you later.